Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Hi, my name is Cliff Roche, and I'm an alcoholic. And it gives me great pleasure to talk about the concepts. I don't know how much you'll be tickled to hear about them, but the new guy will probably be going, huh? I think they're very important, and they certainly have been important in my life in Alcoholics Anonymous. And when you come right down to it, probably they're about as important a basis as the skeletal structure of our program is of any of the three. I'm talking about the steps and the traditions and the concepts. You heard the steps read very well tonight. One of the best readings of Chapter 5 I've heard in a long time. You ever know some people read it like they're reading a phone book or some goddamn thing? That was really good. And so when you come to AA, the steps, they're right there in your face, and you have to work them if you're going to stay here. That's what they told me. If you have any chance to live, you better work the steps. You better do 1 through 12. Otherwise, you don't have the program. That's what the program is, 1 through 12. And they work. They work whether you want them to work or not. They'll work if you think they're stupid. They'll work. They always work. Then later on, we started growing, and AA got bigger and better, and got a lot of AAs in it. And Clancy said Alcoholics Anonymous is the greatest social movement of the 20th century. But it has one fatal flaw. It's just filled with alcoholics. You know, and we find a way to screw this thing up. We'll turn on each other like mad dogs, you know. And self-obsessed people don't get along well. They don't play well. So Bill came up with the traditions to protect us from ourselves and to protect us from each other. There's two basic underlying principles that underlie all the traditions. One, it's one drunk talking to another. That's Alcoholics Anonymous. The greatest cure for alcoholism in the history of the world by so far that it can't even be measured. And it's because it's one drunk talking to another. It's in the front seat of a car on a way to a meeting. One guy who's been there will get the other guy coming along. That's how we work. That's why we went from 2 in less than 70 years to almost 3 million from one drunk talking to another. And if you look over the traditions, you'll see that most of the traditions apply to that. Keep us from messing that up. And the other basic underlying principle behind the traditions is we're not God. None of us. The guy who wrote the book on the history of AA, Kurtz, he named the book Not God. Because he said Bill and Bob, that's what they knew. If anybody in the history of the world are not godlike, it's us. You know, what a bunch of goofs. You know, and our forefathers were just like that. Bill and Bob and all of them, they were just as goofy as us. Doesn't that tickle you? Oh, it just thrills the hell out of me to think they were just goofy drunks like me. And they screwed this thing up badly in the early days. You know, they had all kinds of problems. I was in the New York office, general service office, going through the magazine articles and stuff. And in 37, Bill was in Cleveland, and it said the founder of AA, Bill W., is in Cleveland this weekend. And then they had about a half-a-page picture of him. Well, there's some anonymity for you. And we got in a lot of trouble with that. You know, Lillian Roth wrote a book about getting sober in AA, then got drunk and died, and took about 9,000 people with her. And groups got too much money and got, you know, and then one thing. So the traditions came along. And that's the other thing about us that the traditions protect, that we know we're not godlike. We can't make decisions for each other. I can't decide whether you're right or wrong and that kind of thing. The meeting doesn't have to go the way I want the meeting to go. And AA doesn't have to go the way I want it to go, self-assessed as I am. And so that's what the traditions were all about, to protect us from each other, to keep us from falling apart, and maintain those two basic principles of it's one drunk talking to another and nobody's the boss. Okay? Okay, so we kept growing. Bill thought we were getting too big. You know, back in the late 40s, early 50s, there must have been 20,000 of us. And so, you know, he came up with the tradition, and then he finally came up with this idea of the conference, which is the way AA regulates itself. And that's what the concepts are all about this conference. Okay. Now, I'm assuming that you don't know jack about the concepts, okay? And some of you don't even give a shit, for that matter. But anyway, I think if you listen, and if the main thing is, you know, I gave you this sheet, and when I refer to it, I'd like you to look at it. When I'm not referring to it, then don't look at it, and you'll get more out of it, okay? But suit yourself, though. I don't care. I'm not God. But I'm not going in any order with it either. I'm going to follow the format that I have, that I think it'll get across the best. Now, when we're talking about the concepts, what happened was we have two distinct problems here. We have, how do we maintain our communication with each other? How do we make group decisions about what's good for us or what's bad for us? How do we decide on what literature we want and that kind of thing? Okay, and so that's what the conference is all about. But also, there's laws in this country. When you have a multi-million-dollar business, which AA is, you know, $8-9 million a year, when you look at all the literature and everything, there's governments that are interested in things like that. You know, they like to know where the taxes are going, you know, and who's getting paid and who's not getting paid and that sort of thing. So we have to have some kind of legal structure. Well, what did we just talk about with talking about the traditions? We don't like legal structure. It's one drunk talking to another. Nobody's anybody's boss. What the hell are you talking about? How are you going to have a legal structure? You got to have it, because the laws of the United States say. And so AA has a board of trustees which is legally entrusted by the state of New York to do business in the state of New York. So I have, look at it. Hey, this guy even brings visual aids. Oh, come on here, huh? Think you're fooling with some peasant here? Okay. You're going to understand this very clearly if you get the terminology in your head. See what I mean? The whole thing, it's like learning anything, like airplanes. Bill flew me up here today. Pilots. Yay. You know, why suffer in a car for like 3 hours when you could be in sheer terror for an hour in an airplane? Anyway, the conference is a big meeting which is held every year, and delegates are elected from all over the country, from here, from Southern California, and the delegates go back to the conference, which is held, so far, it's in New York, and the kinds of broad issues that come up for AA during the course of the year are discussed, and then the conference votes on things. And when the conference votes on a main motion and it passes, it becomes, listen to this, an advisory action. Our conference doesn't tell anybody to do anything. But we make advisory actions. Probably not a good idea to put literature from church groups on the table. You know, might not be a good idea. Do what you please, but might not be a good idea. So the conference is all these delegates, plus there's 15 or 20 people who work in the General Service Office in New York, or executives of our company. They're also part of the conference. Also part of the conference is the legal guys, the board of trustees. Sometimes the book calls them the trustees. Sometimes it calls them the board. Sometimes it calls them the board of trustees. Okay? They are the legal. There's 21 of them. And they represent us legally. 7 of them are non-alcoholics. And they're picked because of something they do. They're a doctor in the field of the, or they're a banker, or they're a warden of a prison. We had one guy that was a warden for many years. 14 of them are alcoholics, trustees. There's 21. How many of you know anything about parliamentary law? If there's 14 alcoholics and only 7 non-alcoholics, who wins? Okay, we got that straight. We built that in, okay? But you need those 7. You need those 7 people who are non-alcoholics because they can use their name out in public. They can go to forums and they can go to meetings and talk with people from other fields and that kind of thing. Plus, we get their expertise too. But these 7, by the way, the 7 class, I love this, don't you? The non-alcoholic trustees they call the Class A trustees. The alcoholics they call the Class B trustees. But even the Class A trustees are members of the conference. The conference where we make the decisions, the board of trustees are also, not only are they the board of trustees off by themselves for the rest of the year, but at the conference, they are voting members of the conference. So you have a closed meeting here tonight. The conference is an open meeting because the Class A trustees can vote there. Okay. All right. Now, the conference is a traditional entity. The traditions. What AA is all about. Nobody's anybody's boss. It's one drunk talking to another. Hell with laws and rules and regulations, that kind of thing. That's traditional. The board is legal. We have to have something legal, okay? So the concepts are written around the fact that we have a traditional entity called the conference and a legal entity called the board. Are you with me now? Yeah. Away we go. On the first one, final responsibility and ultimate authority. How you like those 2 words? Final responsibility, and ultimate authority for AA World Services should always reside in the collective conscience of our whole fellowship. Okay? You can't rewrite the first 164 pages of the big book without the okay of 3/4 of all the groups in the United States and Canada. You want to get odds on that? You get 3 of us to agree we got a coalition, you know what I mean? So we are responsible. We're the ones who are responsible. We run AA. We own AA. It belongs to us. They're working for us. Everybody. Your delegate works for you. Your GSR works for your group. Trusted servant. When I was delegate, they used to call it twisted servant. Okay, the second one is the General Service Conference. The conference, remember the conference? The General Service Conference for AA has become, for nearly every practical purpose, the active voice and the effective conscience of our whole society in its world affairs. So, with the delegates and the trustees and the members of the executive board get together every year, and we cuss and discuss what's on the table that year. Which way shall we go? And we make these advisory actions. And any group worth its salt in Alcoholics Anonymous, when those advisory actions come down, you read them and you say, let's try to do that. Because that's, as all of us have the responsibility to back it up. So the conference, we delegate it to the conference. So the conference doesn't have to delegate it to anybody. They're really in charge because it's under the traditions. Okay, and now I'm jumping down. Number 6. Roman numeral 6, V1. The conference recognizes that the chief initiative and active responsibility in most World Service matters should be exercised by the trustee members of the conference, acting as the General Service Board. See, they meet 6, 8, sometimes 10 times a year, and stuff comes up during the year. And so we kind of let them take care of that. Now, here's the biggest thing of all tonight. In all the years I've been sober over 34 and a half years, I've been the New York delegate and blah, 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 and I've studied the history of AA. Almost never, ever has the board, the trustees, these legal guys, have they ever overstepped themselves. Anytime there's been something that's been really, really important to be decided during the year, they put it off until the conference and then hash it out with everybody, and it works out a lot better that way. When I was delegate many years ago, there was a thing that happened. They raised the price of the big book. The Board of Trustees did, because the contributions weren't coming in from the groups. By the way, we have the ultimate responsibility. We're supposed to pay for this thing. That's what our baskets are for. Part of what our baskets are for. But they weren't getting enough money, and they jacked up the price of the big book. And the delegates arrived. Now, at the conference, remember the conference? At the conference, 2/3 of the votes are delegates. Okay? The other third are the Board of Trustees and these people that work in the General Service Office. So again, we have a 2/3 majority. The delegates do. The peasants. Okay? Poor people and peasants. And so we got back there and we said, no, you lower the price of that big book. And they said, well, I don't know if we can. We said, yes, you can. You will do it. And the board said, right, okay. If the conference voted it that way, that's the way it went. And that same year, when a book came out about Bill W. that was published by Harcourt and Brace or somebody, and they were selling it out of the New York office, and the delegate said no. The only thing we sell out of our office is our books. And so they had to take all those books and dump them back on the publisher. And that was one time when I saw a real conflict between the conference and the trustees. But ordinarily, and that's the beauty of it, is that it almost never happens. Isn't it interesting that these guys, these Class A trustees, they love AA as much as we do. They just, I've heard them speak and met many of them. They just adore this program. Usually, there's somebody they love is in AA, that kind of thing. But it's important to them as it is to us. Okay, so I said number 6 was the conference. Or 6 was the conference recognizes that we have to let during the year. We have to let the Board of Trustees make some decisions during the year, because we only meet once a year at the conference. So if something comes up, we've delegated this to them. Now, they have the legal right to do it anyway. But that's not what's important. What's important is that we give them the right through the traditions. Okay, then 7, the charter and the bylaws of the General Service Board are legal instruments empowering the trustees to manage and conduct World Service affairs. The conference charter is not a legal document. It relies upon tradition and the AA purse for final effectiveness. Did you get the last sentence there? That's a very effective, the AA purse. They screw with us, we don't send the money. And that takes care of that. You with me? Okay. 8. The trustees are the principal planners and administrators of overall policy and finance. They have custodial oversight of the separately incorporated and constantly active services, exercising this through their ability to elect all the directors of these entities. Okay, now our legal Board of Trustees, the board, the trustees, they own 2 corporations. They are the legal owners of 2 corporations. First corporation, AA World Service Office, the General Service Office, AAWS World Service. They appoint the board of directors for that AAWS. The Board of Trustees appoints the board of directors. Now, usually on the board of directors of the AAWS, a couple of the trustees serve on it. the trustees themselves. But there's a fellow down in our area, a buddy of mine, Paul Cleary. He serves now on the AAWS board. He was very active for a long time in H&I, and he also is a professional, therapist and that kind of thing, and worked with the other community. So he serves on the AAWs, and he has to go back at least 6 times a year. They're busy folks. They work their butt off. See, but that board of directors is appointed by the board of trustees, so they're in charge of that corporation, not the conference. The board of trustees owns it. You with me? I see your eyes are getting glazed. Okay. Okay, and then the other corporation is called the Grapevine Corporation, which publishes the Grapevine and many other things too. So these 2 corporations, AAWS and the Grapevine Corporation, are owned by the board of trustees, who appoints the board of directors for each of those. So that gives them a lot of power, right? Okay, but that's what 8 means there. Let's look at 11. The trustees, remember the board of trustees, should always have the best possible committees. Okay, the whole conference. When we go back to the conference, if you were the delegate, you would be on a committee when you went back there, and you would work in workshops with your committee. Then you would make recommendations to the floor, just like any big legislative body, and they would vote yea or nay and make an advisory action out of it. But the trustees also have committees, too, that meet all year. For instance, a literature committee. The trustees have a literature committee that meets all year. Usually they're professional people who volunteer to come in and help out. And sometimes that gets us in little problems here and there, but generally speaking, it works real well. Also, remember, in the AAW service office and in the Grapevine office, we have these executives. People make $120,000 a year, $130,000 a year. They're real high-powered executives. They know what the hell they're doing. They're all AAs, and really good AAs. All the ones I've ever met were really good AAs. But see, they run the thing. Now, lots of people who work in the General Service Office and who work for the Grapevine Corporation are non-alcoholics. They're just people we hire to stack books or, whatever. They may be drunk for all I know, but, they don't necessarily have to be members of AA. But the executives in the 2 corporations, the executives, they have to be AA members. And the ones I've met are very good AA members, too. Was I on 9? 11. All right. The trustees should always have the best possible committees, corporate service directors, I was just talking about them, okay, executives, okay, staffs, the executive staffs, and consultants. The composition and the qualification, the induction procedures, and the rights and the duties will always be matters of serious concern. The Board of Trustees has to oversee all of that. The board runs the companies, and the companies are responsible to the board. Okay, did I do 9? No, good. 9 says, good service leadership at all levels is indispensable for our future function and safety. Primary world service leadership, once exercised by the founders, must necessarily be assumed by the trustees. For a long time, the first half of AA, more than the first half. Hey, we're a new group. Right, folks? This thing is so new. I'm only 2nd generation AA. I personally knew the original members of Alcoholics Anonymous in Southern California. I knew them personally. I was raised by them, insulted by them, demeaned by them, humiliated by them. So this thing, we get pretty cocky thinking we're hot stuff, but we haven't been around that long. So it's very important that we have the right stuff. Okay. The first half of AA, Bill and Bob. If you had a problem, what do we do? Well, ask Bill or ask Bob. And then Bob died, before long, and then pretty soon it was ask Bill. The original board of trustees, there were 5. There were 3 non-alcoholics and 2 alcoholics. See how we've changed? In those days, the non-alcoholics didn't trust the alcoholics to make a decision, because they kept getting drunk, And so there were only 5. So when this conference charter came around, all of this ties in. What used to be the old board of directors now are the trustees. And actually what the trustees do, this says, they're kind of taking the place of Bill and Bob. You know, some place to go and say, where can we get this thing settled? But the ultimate responsibility is us. And where the decisions are made are in the conference. The trustees put into action what the conference decides. Is that clear enough? Okay. I'll save 12 to last. Let's jump back up a ways here now. Number 3. Okay, I want to jump a little bit here. This won't be of any value to you tonight at all unless you think about it in terms of yourself. Unless you think about it in terms of your group. Unless you think about it in terms of your inner group. Unless you think about it in terms of your area assembly. At the conference, everybody behaves themselves beautifully. You know, even when people are angry at the conference, everybody gets along. And if something if there's only a 2/3 vote at the conference, they put it off till next year. They don't get one more vote than half and then say, shut your mouth, we win. You know what I mean? Like, how about at meetings, though? You know what I mean? What I'm talking about. All these other things I want to talk about now, this applies to you down here. You see what I mean? In your group. And so, when you ask questions or want to make a comment later, I read a little while back, it says, this year the concepts for world service, it's a big deal this year. They wanted everybody to talk about the concepts. And listen, which embody the administrative, legal, and spiritual principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. And spiritual principles. Okay, so 3, to ensure effective leadership, we should endow each element of AA, the conference, the General Service Board, and its service corporations, staffs, and committees, and executives, with a traditional right of decision. If I get elected delegate and you send me to the conference and we've talked about something that, let's say, well, what happened when I went back to the conference years ago, the gay groups wanted to be listed in the World Directory as gay groups. And a lot of people were really opposed to that in my area in San Diego. But I was too at that time. It was 1976. And so when we had our meeting and when they sent me back to New York, the consensus by the people in my group, in my area assembly, was not to do it. But when we got back to the conference and I heard all the arguments, when I heard the whole thing, I thought that's a no-brainer. And I voted in favor of it because I had the right of decision. You elected me delegate, I have the right to make the decision when I get back there. And the same thing goes for your intergroup rep. And the same thing goes for your GSR. And you can tell them what you expect. You unload and tell them whatever you want. But ultimately, the guy whose butt's on the line is the guy that has to make the decision. And we second-guess the people who work in the General Service Office and in the Grapevine Corporation an awful lot. A lot of people really like to take shots at them. Them and us. There isn't any them. All there is us. But... and so some of the people that work in the General Service Office, they really take some bad heat because people don't, let them have the right of decision. But I see it happen more often, like with the secretary or the office manager. Got our office manager, they'd like to micromanage her to the point of ridiculousness. Okay, so everybody has the right of decision. Number 4, at all responsible levels, we ought to maintain a traditional right of participation, allowing a voting representation in reasonable proportion to the responsibility that each must discharge. So if I'm a GSR, I got to vote in the area assembly. If I'm a delegate, I got to vote at the conference. If I'm a trustee, I got to vote in the trustees and in the conference. And if I'm an executive working for the General Service Office, I have a right to vote too. And nobody can take that away from us. And you have a right to vote in your group. A lot of times we have people that vote in 7 groups. I don't think that's a real good idea. I mean, if something comes up for the good of AA in general, and they take a vote in a group, you should vote in your own group, and that's all. Otherwise, you're voting 7 times, and that's supposed to be illegal. Who knows? A right of participation, voting representative in reasonable proportion to the responsibility each must discharge. And then 5, throughout our structure, a traditional right of appeal ought to prevail, so that minority opinion will be heard and personal grievances receive careful consideration. If you write a letter to the General Service Office complaining about something, you'll get an answer. If you feel like you've been jobbed, you'll get an answer. And the same thing goes for people who work in the office and that kind of thing. Now, let's leave sponsorship the hell out of this. Right, Lee? Sponsorship is not connected to the steps or to the traditions or to the charter. Sponsorship just growed like Topsy, you know. And it's absolutely imperative. It's one drunk talking to another. And I don't know of any democracy when it comes to sponsorship. Shut up and get in the car. So, you know, there's no literature anywhere written about sponsorship. You know, all those guys were new when they were writing the book. You know, like Bill had 2 years. And his sponsor was Ebby, who couldn't stay sober, for Christ's sake. Okay. So anyway, where am I? 5, right of appeal. Okay, so if you get jobbed at a certain level, you can always appeal up. I couldn't get over it when I was a college, because I used to teach parliamentary law at the college level. And so I knew all about parliamentary law. So when I got back to the conference, I went crazy. Because, you know, they'd get down, there would be like 2 guys still against it, and they'd let them talk. And they'd let them talk. And then I think, Christ's sakes, we got 2/3. Get him! You know, but I finally figured it out. At the conference, they call it well, it's unanimous is what about it was about. Oh, substantial unanimity. Isn't that a beauty? That means God damn near everybody. You know what I mean? Substantial unanimity. But you don't see that at the group level a lot of times. And you don't see that at the intergroup level at all. And you don't see it at the area assembly. And I think we need more of that. We need that. Hey, there are no emergencies in AA. Alcoholics have emergencies, but there are no emergencies in AA. If it's got controversial, put it off till next year. That's what they do at the conference. They put it off until it's time. You know, nobody tries to rush decisions. Okay, so, and you have the right to complain, except about your sponsor. Okay, I'm all right. I'm almost finished. Down to 12, of course. Did I miss something, Lee? Did I miss one? Did I get 4? Okay. Did I get what? 10. Oh, every service responsibility should be matched by an equal service authority with the scope of such authority well defined. So if I'm a trustee, I have some authority. I have an area that I can boss, that I can run, that I can make decisions on, and that's mine. And if I'm responsible for that, by God, then I ought to have the right to be able to do it. You know, when I would go in the office of George, my old buddy, who had for a long time was the general manager of the General Service Office, George Dorsey, I'd go in his office. He didn't even have a rug. You know, he'd have like one picture on the wall and just a little bare desk. And I thought, what the hell's going on? He said, if I put a rug in here, Cliff, some guy from New York would come in and start screaming about, you know, how our executives think they're such hot stuff they have to have big offices, you know. That kind of petty thing, that them and us that I was talking about before. And so 10 says, and if I'm a GSR, by God, I have the right to make my decision when I go to the area assembly. I have the responsibility, of course, to ask you what you think about issues that are before us now. But when it comes right down to it, when I hear all the evidence, I'm the one that's going to vote. Okay, so if you have a responsibility, you also have the authority. But nobody has any authority. That's a problem. But 12. Oh, don't you love this one? The conference shall observe the spirit of AA tradition. Tradition. Taking care that it never becomes the seat of perilous wealth or power, that sufficient operating funds and reserve be its prudent financial principle, that it placed none of its members in a position of unqualified authority over others, except sponsors, that all important decisions be reached by discussion, vote, and whenever possible, by substantial unanimity. Listen, in North San Diego County, we started the North County Intergroup in 1979, and I was the first chairman. And we had 90 groups, all right? And at the average meeting, we had like 65 group members, representatives there. After about a year, it fell off. We had 90 groups, and we had like 45 people showing up for the meeting. I wrote this big letter in our newsletter, and then everybody turned out again. Today, in North County, San Diego, we have 650 meetings a week. The average attendant at intergroup attendance is 36. 36 people are making decisions for 650 groups. That's what's wrong with AA today, folks. That's what's wrong with AA. All should be reached by, whenever possible, by discussion, all 36 of them. Vote, all 36 of them. And whenever possible, substantial unanimity, 34 out of 650. 0.5% runs the whole thing. That its actions never be personally punitive nor an incitement to public controversy. That it never perform acts of government. And like the society it serves, it will always remain democratic in thought and action. I don't know about you, it just thrills the hell out of me. It's the most exciting thing I know about the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. This way we do things. The rest of the world can't get along with a damn, But we can do it because we have to, see? We don't have any laws because we have to do it because we love each other. That's the whole thing. And don't think those people that are on the Board of Trustees don't love. They do. I put a few of them down. Some of the people that are Class A trustees. George Valiant, he was a President, Chief Investment Officer of the U.S. Steel and Carnegie Pension Funds. Linda Sherzon, a former judge. Elaine Johnson, a former director of the Center of Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration, and on and on. And this lady wrote the best paper I ever read on singleness of purpose. And she was in charge of a, drug rehabilitation thing. But she knows Alcoholics Anonymous, and she talks about, we stick to what we do. We stick to alcoholism and we don't branch out. I think that's all I was going to cover. So I got time for questions. Are there any? Start at the back, lady, the strawberry hair. Hi, Gail.
My question is, of the 21 people that are the trustees, how often does their jobs rotate?
Oh, they have 4-year terms, but sometimes a trustee will be elected for 4 years, and then he gets elected to, like, the vice chairman, and he does. Valiant, I think, served like 12 years, and Dr. The original guy, he was in quite a number. But most of them only served 4 years. The regional trustees, by the way, the Class B trustees, they're elected by the regions. Like we have a Pacific region trustee that we elected. And then there are 4 of them that are trustees at large. They're usually elected because they have some skill. They're Class B, though, alcoholic. Yeah, the A trustees, you're right. Yeah, again.
So if this first chance, one of those 14, was in the middle of their term and they went out and drank, they would lose their position?
The Class A or B? Oh, yeah, they'd be out in their ass in a hurry, yeah. Oh yeah. I've never heard, now, way back in the early days, the first 3 trustees, alcoholic trustees that were elected to the old board, got drunk. But in those early days, a lot of people got drunk a lot of times. And so, yeah. But I have never heard of a trustee who got drunk while he was serving as trustee. I imagine this happened. I know that my sponsor was a Panel 18 delegate, And the guy who was 4 ahead of him, panel 14 delegate, went back to New York for the conference, and he got off the plane drunk coming back. He went to meet the guy, got off. Hey. Not funny. Yeah, this fellow here, the yellow shirt.
My name's Steve. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Steve.
I was just wondering, other than the gay issue and the price of the big book that's gone to conference, what were some of the more poignant issues that you experienced in your tenure with the program?
We had a lot of problem with people with 2 hats back 20 years ago. People who were active in the community drug enforcement and that kind of thing. And they got a lot of them got elected trustee too, and they were bringing drug stuff in a lot. Well, it's all just drugs. And that was one. And we've had a lot of problem with the court programs. What the hell are we going to do? How can we cooperate with them without affiliating with them? And what about the ones that say we're a religion now? And that kind of thing. Literature, other literature creeping into the program. That's been another big one. Rights of members, not to be kicked out of a group and that kind of thing. You want any more? Okay, swell. There's stuff every year. There's something. A fellow in the suit. Yeah.
Kevin Alcoholic.
Kevin.
Maybe you can set something straight here. With the 4th edition of the big book, I heard a story that it was printed against the will of the conference. And according to what you just said, that can't happen. Do you have any history with that?
Yeah, the conference approved it. It was one of the advisory actions. They said, yes, that's the 4th edition. That's fine. I think there were some people that weren't delighted. I got a kick out of that. That committee that did all the work of the stories. They said to him, "Did you deliberately try to make it to show diversity?" And they all said, "No." But when we got through, we were amazed. Okay, sure you were. Tell me about the tooth fairy now. They just, but those are just stories. They didn't mess with the book. You know what I mean? They didn't mess with the first 164 pages. No, who was delegate? He was kind of, Gala was delegate in our area, wasn't too, but she voted aye. Yeah. But there was some noise, I think. Some people sounded off at that particular one because they stretched it out about 7 years.
I got one more question, and then I'll shut up and let somebody else ask. What exactly is the charter of AAWS? What is their purpose in life?
To form a legal corporation to administer Alcoholics Anonymous. Now the charter in the, it wants to spell out the things that I read. Nobody's the boss over anybody else. That's our, Yeah, but that's illegal. See, a charter is a legal document usually.
Right. Okay.
Lee.
Yeah, the right of decision. I was wondering, that could be very interesting. The way your story where the gays issue and you went and you saw and you acted responsibly. But do you have any good stories when the alcoholic ran wild and a horror story of a right of decision where?
I don't know of any. No doubt with alcoholics it happened. For instance, there might have been somebody who just kept voting no matter what, if he was the only one. But I can't think of one. Yeah. What? Oh.
He said stop bringing up my name.
Oh. There was somebody back there. Yeah. Hi, Bill.
In the third one, you said that our delegate could go and vote against the will of the assembly for a good reason, but and that happened in Southern California with the book. It seemed that most folks at the assembly were pretty much against it. It was wasn't 100%, but then he told their group, that was a bridge meeting down in Long Beach. He stated that. So, do you think that kind of undermines people's faith in participating in the assemblies? Like, why should I go because this guy's going to do what he wants to do anyway?
Yeah, I suppose there could be individuals who would feel that way. However, when we read the charter, we say, how else could you do it? You got to give the guy the right of decision. He's a trusted servant. He's not a servant. He's a trusted servant. I mean, we have to, and if the guy's managing director in the general service office, I have to assume that just because he's an executive making $100,000 a year, that he doesn't love AA as much as I do. That he will do what he thinks is right for AA. But you're right. You could be pissed. You could say, the vast majority of us said, do this. Now, when I went back and told my group, I told them some of the arguments that changed my mind, and they went, oh, yeah,
Pete, alcoholic.
Pete.
Now, every 4 years when they say that they have the 21 representatives, are they chosen from the delegates? Their nominations are put forward of these people?
The Class B trustees are elected by the conference. The Class B trustees who are from an area, like Pacific Region, we elect the Pacific Region guy. Now, everybody votes on the B trustees at large, okay? Everybody at the conference. The Class A trustees are elected by the Board of Trustees with conference approval. In other words, they look around, they say, this George Valiant, he's got a great reputation, and we could really use his expertise. They'll ask you, would you like to serve on the board? And he'd say yes, and they elect him, for the Class A. Good question. There's somebody listening. Yes.
I had a question about, my name is Julio, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Julio.
Who picks up the tab for these delegates that travel and where they...
Well, the area assembly picks up the delegates tab. Back when I was delegate in 1976, the check bounced. I'm in New York, and my check... We had a guy who was a CPA, was our treasurer. But now, if anything today, Julio, I feel like, this is personal opinion, I think there's too much money in AA now. I mean, like at my area assembly now, when they have the Pacific Region Conference, they have it a couple months before the conference, so the delegates can get together and talk things over from this area. Now, they used to send the delegate. They paid for the delegate to go up to Idaho, wherever it was. Now they send the delegate and the alternate delegate and the area chairman and the area vice chairman and his wife. I don't know. They spend a lot of dough just pooping around that don't seem to be saving drunks to me. So your group supports the area assembly, right? Yeah. Right. Okay. And then the area assembly supports the delegate. Now, the conference also picks up part of the tab for the delegate. And then, of course, the conference picks up for the trustees and the other people. And it's expensive. The conference is expensive because they have it in a hotel, and you got to be right there. But you work your butt off, though. I mean, I arrived on Sunday, and I worked until Saturday night. We were just going all the time. Tremendous experience. Oh, God, it's wonderful. Yeah. Really.
I'm Kayla, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Kaylee.
You just said that you think that AA has got too much money. You're talking about AA as a whole, not the individual group. Do you think that we disperse the money more to central offices and H&I and other?
I think the more money should go to the central office first, 60%. And I think, like if an area assembly has a lot of money, they ought to just send it on to New York. Not hang on and look for ways to spend it. I guess that's what I'm talking about. I personally object to the way it looks like people just want to do a boondoggle, get a free trip somewhere, that kind of thing. Now, I could be wrong. I was once. I agreed to sponsor him, yeah. But no, so they, like when I was delegate, the area treasury was like $900, and the delegate today, the treasury's like $17,000. I think if we let the money, but look at all the groups that barely contribute to it all. In our 650 groups in North County, I'll bet you 200 of them contribute. And some of them are just so small, they don't have enough money to pay the rent, so how can they do anything with that? You know what I mean? Young lady there?
We're talking about the oversight of the Grapevine Corporation. I saw some paperwork within the last year about whether they were going to be able to sell our literature to Hazleton, who could then sell it. And I never heard the outcome of that. And who would have?
They decided not to do that. And
who would have the final
That's the conference. There's the question was asked earlier. That's the kind of thing the conference say, no. And not even treatment centers. If they want to buy it, let them buy it. We're not going to go through them. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, that happened. I forgot that, and I should have talked about that. That's a conference thing. Now, the trustees, it probably came to them during the year, and they probably went, oh, I ain't touching that with a 10-foot pole. We're going to the conference with this baby. Yeah.
That's an advisory, right?
Advisory action, yes, that's right. For instance, we might say, it's an advisory action from the conference is, let's stop chanting in meetings. But this group might decide that you like chanting. And so it's just an advisory action. You know?
So can they still go against the will of the advisory?
Oh, sure. The only thing you can't do with AA is violate the copyright laws, because that's a legal thing, and they might, but we give our steps to anybody. You know how that is, everybody. Because groups violate the traditions all the time, and even area districts, that kind of thing. Yeah, yellow shirt.
Yeah, Steve, I'll apologize.
Steve.
I've been having a hard time finding an answer to this question. It's about Tradition 7, but I thought you might know. Is there a cap on the amount of money that you can donate to AA?
Yeah, $2,000 a year. And but if you're an AA, if you're not an AA, you can't contribute anything. Nothing. To 2,000. I think. See, there's another. What I was talking about earlier. It used to be 500. Now all of a sudden it was 1,000. Now it's 2,000. Come on. I haven't got 2,000 on me, I don't think. But I guess with prices, maybe 2,000 isn't that bad. Yeah.
I'm Ted. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Ted.
I don't know how good this question will be, but since we're on the topic of money, the Class B and the Class A, I'm sure they must be paid because if the Class A has the expertise and to be up that high, none of them are paid? None of them get paid. Their expenses are paid. Whenever they go back to New York for this stuff, their airfare, the airfare coach. If they want to upgrade themselves, they but and all their meals and everything. And the same thing when I'm at the conference. If I'm the delegate, I eat and everything too. No, they get no salary. The only salary people are people who work, who have the job to do. In other words, if I'm the purchasing director for the AAWS and I'm an executive, I have to be paid. But the trustees are all free. Yeah, they donate their time. Yeah. Boy, and do they donate a lot of time? God Almighty. This lady here and then there.
I'm Sharon.
Hi, Sharon.
I heard something about the circle and triangle stopped being our symbol because of something that happened.
Because of AA group, because AAs are. Never mind. The medallions they make? Well, there were companies making these medallions with the circle and triangle on them. Companies out here making money on our symbol. And so the General Service Office, the Board of Trustees, and the conference said, hey, quit that. So they had to quit. Well, we'll sue you. So then the medallions started coming out without the circle and triangle. And the AA said, I want the circle and triangle. I want my circle and triangle on it. So we had to abandon it, let it go, so that these guys could use it. But that's AAs. I want what I want. I want it yesterday, So we lost it. We lost it just because they... Yeah, want my thing. Yeah, sure. Well, and they're all making money on it too. The other fellow here, yeah.
My name is Bob Koch. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Bob.
As far as the participation in our structure and what's going on with the general service and group level, I know this group, there's a lot of people that participate here. But what bit of advice could you give us to take back to our other groups and around to try and encourage more participation? Is there any words of wisdom to stir the pot?
Yeah, boy, I've tried it. I've been doing it for 33 years now, trying to, and I asked Bill to fly me up here. That's what I'm doing, and that's what Bill's doing, so that I could tell you this, so that you might want to do that. You have to stand up and you have to have guts in the group and say, hey, we have no goddamn GSR here. What's going on? How come we don't have an intergroup rep? How much do we contribute to the General Service Office? How come everybody's sitting around with their
finger in their ear while we're stacking shares. You know, of course, what it really comes down to, all the things that are wrong in AA today, my personal opinion, anything, whether it's service, no matter what it is, it comes down to the same word, sponsorship. If you have lack of sponsorship, you have lack of participation. And so that's why I think this group is pretty strong on sponsorship, isn't it? You piss the rest of the groups off, all right? You always know you're doing it right when the other groups are pissed off.
Mark Alcoholic.
Mark.
I don't think it pertains to it, but how does the story get changed? How did the name of the story get changed from Dr. Alcoholic Addict to Acceptance is the Key?
Well, that was a committee, a trustees committee, literature committee that made that decision. It wasn't a real popular one with a lot of people. Originally, that story was called The Bronze Moccasins. Remember, he made the moccasins in his when he was in. And then what happened with that story is that the acceptance part of the story that Paul wrote appealed. You know, have you ever been in a group where people bring literature in to read? Somebody always brings that. It really strikes all of us right in the heart. You know, that acceptance. When I'm not accepting something, there's something wrong with me. And so that became so important that I think the committee thought, well, we ought to put that in the title. Then it was doctor, booze, and pills. See, they didn't like that because we don't want to talk about booze and about pills here. You know, we're AA. We have signal of purpose. If you took pills, that's fine. You know, but we don't write about it. And then they finally came up with the acceptance thing. So he's had 3 titles to that. The Bronze Moccasins were first.
You were here before the 3rd edition. Prior to the 3rd edition, had you personally ever heard anyone identify as an alcoholic addict?
Prior to the 3rd edition?
Prior to that title of the story of the 3rd edition?
Oh, hell yes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, God, when I came in, there were a lot of people. My buddy that I came in with you always said, I'm Terry, I'm an alcoholic and a dope fiend. Oh. Myself personally, I have 3. I'll talk about this in my story tomorrow morning if any of you show up. It's a very entertaining story. I have 3 children who are members of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, one has 16 years, one has 4 years, 2 have 4 years, and every one of them also did drugs. I would not want to keep them out. You know, I can't imagine anybody under the age of 40 who came in here who was a pure alcoholic. I can't imagine. But we have singleness of purpose. And we stick to that. And if we stick to that, we don't get in any trouble. But that's sponsorship again. In other words, if I sponsor you, you ain't going to stand up and say, I'm an addict. More than once. But see, sponsorship, hell, the sponsee is the one that has all the power. I mean, I sponsor Bill and I sponsor Lee here. And usually if I give them a suggestion, they follow through. If I yell at them, they say, sorry, I'll try better. At any point in their life when they've had enough, they can just say, Cliff. And I'm fired. And it's all over. They have absolute control of the situation. But they have trusted me, and I trust my sponsor, you know. Yeah. Do you have a question?
Yeah, on this thing you said when you're talking about, has it ever come close to where they, you know, you're talking about not acting as a government? In other words, has it ever come that close?
I think it did back in the old days before we had the conference. I think that's why Bill created the conference situation, because the old board used to make some. But see, we were so wacko then. Guys were doing stuff that were just, you know, blowing their anonymity all over the place. It was just crazy. And people getting drunk left and right. There was a group in Long Beach, they had so much money in their treasury. This is true. They got into this big fight, and they all got drunk. The whole group got drunk over this money stuff. So, yeah, you know, they had to have some government. And maybe the trustees once in a while go too far. I don't know. I know that with the internationals, I get myself, you know, they hire that Tally Corporation and those jackasses, and they pretty much give the Tally Corporation whatever they want, you know, and I'm not going to any more of them, you know. And Minnesota did mine in, you know.
What's the Tally Corporation?
The Tally Corporation puts on the international. They're a great big corporation that puts on conventions, and they're in charge of everything. I worked for 2 years, you know, for the one in San Diego. You know, we got everything ready. The Tally Corporation comes in there and steps all over everybody and squishes it. And the guy that was the transportation, you know, director, he got screwed so bad, and they keep using the same one. And I've written thousands of letters about not using the Tele Corporation, so that you get to the conference and the international, and any meeting you want to go to has been full for 3 days. The only meeting you can go to, is for left-handed tulip pluckers or something. You know what I mean? And it's not done well. So there's one area I think some change. Oh, more questions. I think maybe some people want to go home. Go ahead, but I'll answer questions. Let the slackers leave. Yeah.
I'm just curious about one thing. No matter how badly a group does not pay attention to the traditions or the stats, but it is one alcoholic talking to another alcoholic, and their group conscience has voted in all sorts of absurd rules. Is it still considered an AA group if it's one alcoholic talking?
Probably not. Probably the General Service Office would have the right, which it did one time when I was delegate, to a guy who was a minister down in San Diego, had a group that was his group, and it was a Christian group, and I kept calling him, and he kept telling me to go to hell, and they just took the number, the computer number, they just removed it and said, as far as the General Service Office is concerned, you're not recorded as a group. Now, most of those are not groups anyway. They don't have a GSR. They're not connected to the service structure. They're a meeting, and a meeting can do anything. The tradition says you can do anything you want as long as it doesn't affect other groups or AA as a whole. Now, if it starts affecting AA as a whole, people are going to notice it and make comments about it. And matter of fact, like this group, they jerked their number. That didn't stop them. They kept right on meeting. I don't think I helped you very much, but oh well. Kaylee?
Kind of along them lines, I was kind of, not to be judgmental of another meeting hall that considers himself a group, but I went to a meeting the other day, and there was somebody that was in a coma, or he was in the hospital for a very long time because he went back out there and he drank, and he came back and he resumed his position as secretary. And I got a little bit upset with that because I feel that he's now a newcomer and he needs to, that position probably shouldn't be, am I being too judgmental?
Well, you can be judgmental as you want. That's your privilege. You're not going to change anything. I belonged to a group years and years ago where the secretary was drunk every goddamn week. He'd come in just snockered. It just ticked me off. And I said, oh, well, he'll get sober. You know why they did it? They didn't want to do it themselves. Now, how many times did you see they elect a newcomer treasurer? Oh, good. Good idea there, yeah. Guy's broke, hasn't got a brass razoo. Let's elect him treasurer. And get him drunk, You know what I mean? It's because the guy with 2 and 3 and 5 and 10 years is too damn lazy to be the treasurer. And he hasn't got a sponsor strong enough to tell him he's lazy. We got to do it ourselves. I'll bet you this group that nobody else wants to be secretary. See what I mean? Get a newcomer, pump him up there.
Could you expand a little bit on the substantial unanimity and the benefits of it at the group level? And does your home group participate that way?
My home group did a lousy job last year on substantial unanimity. But we thought it over and went back and did it later again. We made some basic changes in our format. My home group's a speaker question and answer meeting, and there's some stuff that we're reading early. They used to read in our group the only authority in AA is the big book, and that's not true. The only authority in AA is a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. So we got that changed, and it was a real hassle. People were really ticked off about that. They felt like we were attacking the big book. We just want it to be accurate. That's what the tradition says. And so we made a whole bunch of changes at once, but it was spirited. And there was that thing that came close, and so we put it off for a while, and then it passed almost unanimously. Yeah, at the conference they just do that automatically. It has to be substantial, just about everybody. Oh, they just put it off. They don't vote yes or no. They just say next year. And so maybe the groups ought to do more of that, I think, you know, or talk it over longer. But in a group, if you have a business meeting in your group, how many of you have a business meeting in your group? A lot more than we do in our area. Usually about 12 people or 4 people show up and they make the decisions. That's a unanimity if all 4 of them agree.
My name is Eddie Duffy. I'm alcoholic.
Hi, Eddie.
There's one thing that you didn't discuss. I think everybody might want to know about floor actions in the conference.
Oh, floor actions at conference. They come from the committees, and they come onto the floor as a main motion. The literature committee recommends that a new pamphlet, you know, left-handed tulip pluckers, be written, and so then they consider it. They vote yes or no. If it votes yes, then it's an advisory action, and that's floor action. Comes from the committees. Everything comes from the committee onto the floor, just like the Congress or the state legislature or any other. But when they come on the floor, a recommendation from one of the committees. I was on the literature committee in the years that I was when I was delegate, and we recommended eliminating a lot of pamphlets. In those days, we had way too many, you know, and it passed. Well, these guys are suckers. I love it. I love it.
Well, it was, along with what Eddie was saying, it was my understanding that our area 93 came off of floor action. It was actually from our delegate and had not gone through committee, but I could be wrong.
And the delegate brought what up?
That we needed to have a new area.
No, that would have to go to agenda committee. Yeah. But then they voted yes, so you had a new area.
Okay, I'll let you know the history on that just because I know, and it was what it was that went to committee. The committee could not decide on whether to rent a new area or not, and so our delegate did not want to go home back to Area 5 and say yes. They didn't have a decision, so she made a floor action outside of the committee to say, please give us an answer, yes or no, not a decision. And then it was discussed by the whole conference, and we were granted the new area.
Terrific. That was a good delegate. Guts up, huh? Yeah, you don't hear that. That never happened when I was there. Of course, there were so many things coming in from committee, you didn't have time to vote on anything else. But I wonder why the committee... Was it a trustees committee or the conference committee?
It was policies and admissions committee, and they couldn't decide.
See, the trustees have a committee, and the conference has it. Must have been the conference committee. They couldn't decide. Okay. Thank you, guys. You were terrific.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. And let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, in one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.